study in God's Word. Now, here's Pastor Murray.
All right, good day to you. God bless you. Welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Hey, welcome to this family Bible study hour. We're ready to get back into our Father's Word, the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is such an interesting book in as much as Ezra, the book of Ezra, which really, in the original manuscripts, they were both one book. Some would call Nehemiah Ezra 2 or 4, whichever the case might be. But Ezra was to build the temple itself, rebuild it, and Nehemiah, which means Yahweh's comforter or consolation. Nehemiah, as you remember, he's really a prayer warrior. He knows how to reach our Father's heart. And as I told you in chapter 1 and 2, if you ever want to know how to really reach the Father, take his example. Now, in a way, you're going to see this again in Nehemiah, and as much as we come to chapter 4, it's kind of an insert. Chapter 4 is not a little bit of history, yes, but showing you the troubles and so forth, especially you're going to find out building up to that as we get to chapter 5. People can really gain a lot, but then you have the, I like to call it the everyday existence. You can get in a rut if you're not careful. But we're going to see how in this chapter 4 you take care of your enemies or those that would oppose you. Okay? So, chapter 4, still history. Chapter 5, it will be that's kind of inserted on personal feelings. Okay, building to that, let's take off with chapter 4, verse 1, a word of wisdom from our Father. Let's go with it. But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth, he was angry, and took great indignation and mocked the Jews, or better translated, the tribe of Judah that had returned. Mocked them, made light of them. That could be intimidating if you let it. Have you ever had have you ever been outnumbered and at a weak point, because as an example, your defense, the wall was really in a shambles, it was down. But you've got to remember this, who is your wall? As it is written in Ezekiel chapter 38, God is our wall. In this end generation, you don't need any other wall. Naturally, using common sense in whatever the situation is. But against your enemy, the devil, you don't need any wall other than God, because I guarantee you he can't come through God if you're on guard, all right? So the stage is set then, verse 2. And he spake before his brethren and the army of Samaria, and said, what do these feeble Jews, what do these feeble tribe of Judah, a little old ragtag army that's come back in here, will they fortify themselves? Question. Will they sacrifice? In other words, will they pay honor to their God? Will they make an end in a day? Do they think they're going to pray and build this wall up in one day? It would probably better translate it, but I'm sure that wouldn't happen. Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? What do they think they're going to do with that mess? All right? Again, making light of them, mocking them. Now, verse 3. And I might say that there was a stone found, I believe it was in the year 1909, and it was written to Sanballat's sons, where Sanballat himself was titled the governor of Samaria. The Bible proves itself much in the stones when the stones speak. Verse 3, now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up He shall even break down their stone wall. In other words, there's nothing to worry about over there. That wall is so weak and that people so weak that a fox could overcome them. Verse 4. Now, what do you do in a situation like this? Would you turn to your wall? Would you get behind your wall? And if your wall is God, what does that mean? Verse 4. Hear, O our God. This is Nehemiah, that great prayer warrior. For we are despised, and turn their reproach upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. In other words, God is your protection. He can overcome any of your enemies if you truly believe that, and use common sense. Naturally, that is required, is utilizing common sense. Do you use common sense? But our Father, when you approach Him honestly, unashamedly, and with the love in your heart for He that is our Father, then He hears. Watch this, verse 5. And cover not their iniquity. Let their sin come forth. And let not their sin be blotted out from before thee. For they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. In other words, it was God Himself that ordered the building of the temple and the building of the wall. Nehemiah had prayed much about this. And even to the point now that Cyrus had ordered the temple and the wall to be rebuilt, and not only that, he gave them a blank check to do it with. And it would seem that they would kind of fall away from this or forget it occasionally, as we'll find in the next chapter. But what Nehemiah knows, and this is a very important point in your life today, beloved, you listen carefully to me. When you know from prophecy that God has ordered something, you can rest assured that He is angry with your enemies if they try to prevent it. And that's what the case was here. That's why Nehemiah could so freely say that, I know they've made you angry. Verse 6. So build we the wall. All the wall was joined together unto the half thereof. For the people had a mind to work. They weren't lazy. They weren't holding back at this time, other than just a few of the elders. They were all working. This didn't mean that half the wall had been finished. It meant that half the wall was finished halfway up. In other words, they built all joined together all around the city, and the wall was now half complete. Verse 7. But it came to pass that when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabians and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem was made up and that the breaches began to be stopped, then they were very wroth. In other words, when those gates were rebuilt from the timber Cyrus had given them, had ordered, and when that wall began to go up, they began to get angry about it. Verse 8. And conspired all of them together to come and to fight against Jerusalem and to hinder it. And anytime you start a good work, there will be those that will say, you're never going to be able to accomplish that. Doubters, worriers. It's never wrong to be concerned, but never forget at the same time the teachings of Christ. If a wise builder begins building a building, he knows he has the money to finish it with before he starts. Or if a wise general is going to fight an army, he sends out spies or ambassadors to observe the size of the enemy, the weapons they carry, and whether or not he can defeat them. And if he comes to the conclusion he can't defeat them, he starts making peace with them, okay? So it is here that anytime you have a plan in your life, there will be those around that will they'll just really put you in a low state of mind if you're not careful. Always be positive. When God gives you a direction, when God helps you, never worry about it. He's your wall. Verse 9. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto our God and set a watch against them day and night because of them. Now, they didn't simply, do you know what it means to set a watch day and night? They put guards out there. And don't forget, they still have the guards that Cyrus sent with them to help them arrive there safely. In other words, they didn't just pray and say God will take care of it. They set a watch. They were careful. They kept guards with weapons in hand, ready to defend themselves. God will always bless you. What do you do? What was the first thing that Nehemiah did when this trouble came upon them? It's important. What did he do? He prayed. He asked God's wisdom and their protection. And he asked that God take his vengeance on this enemy. And then after having prayed, he did something about it, all right? He put out guards, verse 10. And Judah said, the strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we are not able to build the wall. There is so much junk, rubbish, and everything else around here, and we're working day and night, standing watch one night and probably working the next and so forth, until it seems like it's about to take us down. Verse 11. And our adversaries said, they shall not know, neither see, till we come in the midst among them and slay them and cause the work to cease. Now, we have heard the complaint. We know the plan of the enemy. There were many people, part of the tribe of Judah and so forth, that lived in the immediate areas. You're going to find out in a moment. And they came in the daytime and helped them, and then usually some of them would go back home at night. And they kept bringing information in whereby Nehemiah knew the plan of Sanballat and Tobiah. He knew their enemy's plan. Therefore, he was able to prepare for it. But I want you to notice the order of the sequence here, the chronological order of events, let's say it that way, whereby you can build yourself up in prayer, and then when you turn back around and face that wall and lift those brick, you get dirty, you get tired, you get hungry, and then here comes another threat from the cotton-picking enemy to where they're going to overrun you and just turn you to mincemeat as the information they send. That can cause some people to worry. That can make them face the reality of the garbage and miss the true reality, the reality that God is our wall, and you don't have anything to worry about if you're using common sense. Now, don't forget that. It can happen in your daily life when you think that everything is about to tumble and crumble right down around you. The enemy likes to make it rough, and you know something? Your father thinks you're pretty tough, you know, that you're a can-do type person. That's the way he likes his children to be. So he doesn't mind if they pile a little on you occasionally. It's just words, and words can't hurt you necessarily unless you allow them. So it's good exercise. Don't ever forget it. Satan will try you and try you as long as you let him, all right? Now let's go on with this next verse. We come to verse 12. And it came to pass that when the Jews, or these children of Judah, which dwelt by them came, they said unto us 10 times, from all places whence ye shall return unto us, they will be upon you. Now that didn't help a whole lot. It loses a little in the translation. What it says is those that did live locally and came there and worked. The women and children were at home, and they needed protection. They'd heard the rumors of all that they were going to do to them, and they were asking the men and the servants to rush back home to protect their home there. 10 times is a number which means simply again and again and again. They really said, hey, the battle's about to begin. Come home and protect your family. You local people here. Verse 13. Therefore set I in the lower places behind the wall, those places where the wall was easy accessible, that would be a weak point to defend, and on the higher places. I even set the people after their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. Part of this is a little bit confused. It means on the high knolls where we could see them coming from a long distance to report in, well armed, well equipped, and ready. Verse 14, and I looked and rose up and said unto the nobles and to the rulers, the heads of the various clans that with their segments of the wall, and to the rest of the people, be not ye afraid of them. Remember the Lord. Remember our wall, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your house. In other words, God is our wall, and don't you forget it, and don't you be afraid. I'm going to tell you something. In your daily life, if you allow the world to bring you fear, do you realize that's an insult to your Father? If you are really, truly serving Him, and you're doing your best, which for some of us, maybe it's not all that much, but He counts it as perfect, all right? If you're trying, He counts it perfect. And when you worry and grow fearful of the enemy, you're telling your Father, hey, you can't cut it. And they're going to run right over me. They're going to give me trouble. Because, God, you're not big enough to stop them. How do you think that makes Him feel? Really proud of you? Well, I'll tell you one thing. You can rest assured He's going to let them run right over you and leave a mess because you deserve it. If you doubt your Father so much, if you count Him as nothing, if you count Him as lower than your enemy, hey, you're not worth it, friend. They're going to run over you, and there won't be anything left but a greasy spot in your spiritual life. And you brought it on yourself. Why? You didn't love your Father enough to know that our Father is the strongest, toughest, lovingest, can-doest person that ever existed, and you don't have to worry about anything. You may get a little mud sloshed on you, and you may get knocked down a time or two, but He'll jerk you back up, and we've got the victory before it ever starts. Now that's the kind of morale you want to have in your own heart when you're doing battle with the enemy. Doubt has sunk many a ship. God is our wall, and don't you ever forget it. And as long as you are behind that wall, or we could even use the analogy of the great eagle wing, as long as we're under that eagle's wing, our Father, as it is written in the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32, then you don't have to worry about anything. You've got it made, friend. There are no giants out there when God is with us, when we're behind His wall. Okay, enough said. 15. And it came to pass when our enemies heard that it was known unto us, and God had brought their counsel to naught, the element of surprise, in other words, that we returned all of us to the wall, every one unto his work. Now wasn't that, in other words, the enemy knew they had been found out. There wasn't one shot fired, not one sword extended to draw blood. And you see, all it was a bunch of talk. And they had absolutely nothing to fear or to worry about. And that's the way it is most often in your life. Those things that are the darkest and the worst to approach in your daily life, it's just a bunch of smoke when you really get behind the wall and face it. Do you understand my point? They didn't come. They were afraid to, because they knew God. There's one thing about it. Our enemy Satan knows God is very real, my friend, whether you do or not. And when he knows God is protecting you, he's hands off. He wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. Because he knows the power of God, where maybe you, when you got your faith pumped up and aired up to where you've got enough to get to that plateau, he knows it of a certainty. He doesn't have to be reminded too often that if God has his hand protecting his children, that if Satan makes a move at him, he'll smash him like a fly. You see? They know better. So what are you worried about? Why are you so frightful? Do you think what I'm saying is a fairy tale? You'd better recognize it as reality, my friend, or you're going to have a tough trip in these end times. It is very real. And you're either a Christian with faith or you're a pretender. You're a grease spot about to happen somewhere because you're not behind the wall with the faith that you should have. And I cannot understand. Really, from the very bottom of my mind, I cannot understand, with such a loving, protecting, strong Father, why someone would not want to be behind that wall. Again, recapping, they knew the Father was watching over them. The prayers had been said. They weren't about to attack them. Verse 16, and it came to pass from that time forth that the half of my servants wrought in the work, and the other half of them helped both the spears, the shields, and the bows, and the habergeons, and the rulers were behind all the house of Judah. In other words, they worked as a unit. They worked very well. Just because the present danger seemingly was over, they still did not let their guard down. I don't know why I didn't plan to do this, but in the personal life, I'm going to use this again. I must. I feel that someone needs it. You see, after you have gained a victory, which they just had, the enemy quit. Many times you begin to celebrate in your life because you just had a victory or a blessing, and you go crazy as far as keeping your guard up against the enemy. That's to say, Satan and his little evil spirits. Just a little bit of success and boy, you blow yourself away. Don't ever leave yourself spiritually unprotected. You're asking for it when you do. You're listening to Nehemiah, a very wise leader, a very wise general, knowing the power of prayer, the power of the wall of God, and the minds of the enemy. The enemy is always real easy to figure out. Verse 17. They which builded on the wall, and they that bear burdens, that's to say the stones, picking them up, with those that laid it, every one with one of his hands wrought in the work, and with the other hand held a weapon. In other words, those that would have been carrying this garbage and trash from the outside of the wall were, you know, you can, with a basket, a handled basket, could still hold a weapon in one hand and pick up stones with the other. What he's saying to you here is they were extremely careful to see that they were protected, and to see that if an enemy sent a spy, that when they looked at the wall, they saw the glistening spears of Israel. Now that's the way you want to let the enemy spiritually see you today, my friend. When they look, they'll see the glistening armor of that wall to know you're protected. Do you understand? Never let your guard down even while you're working. Not because you're afraid. At the same time, you can be very happy. Because when you have God as a wall, you have a full-time guard, okay? As long as you let him know that you know. 18. For the builders, everyone had his sword girded by his side, and so built it. And he that sounded the trumpet was by me. You know, you're in a generation that's going to hear a trumpet, about 7 of them. I'm not sure we haven't already heard a couple of 3. But the 7th one will sound, and will it be heard? Yes, for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. So you see a great deal in a prophetic sense, and never forget what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 10, that these events, this history happened as an example of how it would be for us in the end times. Don't ever forget that. There's nothing new under the sun, and your Father teaches us as to how it shall be in the end by how it was in the beginning, as a matter of fact. So learn. Verse 19. And I said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, the work is great and large, and we are separated upon the wall, one from another. In other words, it was quite a large area. They could not visibly see each other in line of sight. That's why the trumpet, and that's why he's saying this. Verse 20, in what place thereof ye hear the sound of the trumpet, resort ye thither unto us. Our God shall fight for us. That's very important, beloved. Do you know that your Father, the creator of this universe and every star that you see, that's your Father, and he will fight for you. That takes away all fear. Concern, it's wise to be concerned. Concerned that you have not forgotten to do all you can do first. And then know God will fight for you. Whatever you forget, he'll take care of. He knows what you need. He knows what is in your mind. And when you are counting on him for that wall will always be there. And I promise you, nobody can come through it. No one can break through it. Verse 21. So we labored in the work, and half of them helped the spears from the rising of the morning till the stars appeared. Kept that guard up visibly all day. 22. Likewise, at the same time said I unto the people, let every one with his servant lodge within Jerusalem, that in the night they may be a guard to us and labor on the day. In other words, our numbers move inside the wall with your servants and so forth, and that way the numbers themselves within the city will be our guard. Always, what is he doing here? And inasmuch as I have utilized this chapter as an analogy for your life today, your personal life, how would we say this? Always plan your day. You know, I like to get up 1 hour earlier than I would normally have to, let's just say, just grab a quick bite and run. I like to have 1 hour to sit and sip hot tea or whatever my choice is, and I'll leave that a secret. And Juan Carlos would be pleased to know that. And Juan and his donkey, but anyway, that 1 hour of planning out your day and consider things, think on them, pray about them if you must. And usually I try to have 2 paths to go. If something doesn't work this way, then hey, I'm going to try it this way. That's my alternate flight plan, so to speak. And get yourself together, make plans. And your day, I have a procedure which I use. I like to accomplish the hardest thing first. Get that out of the way, and the rest of the day you can just skip right along, you know, and it makes it a pretty nice day. But never let a day go by that you don't accomplish something. I don't care if it's to pick up a paper cup out of your yard. Never let one day go by that you don't accomplish something that makes your property or your abode look better than it did the day before. Again, I don't care if it's just sweeping the sidewalk, picking up a piece of dust. Keep it nice. Plan your day. Be aggressive. Be a can-do type person. And your day will go a whole lot better. Okay, I don't know who needed that, but there you go. And what does this have to do with the battle of rebuilding the wall? God is your wall, and you got a battle on your hands, friend. We're in the end times. This is that generation. Okay, the next verse we go to, verse 23, to complete the chapter. So neither I, that's being Nehemiah, nor my brethren, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard which followed me. In other words, this would be the guard that Cyrus sent with him that made the trip here. That's something else you would have wanted to consider. The very soldiers of the land, and this is what they were, these were the soldiers that collected the king's tribute or tax and gave it to them to build this. They would have to come through the king himself to reach these people. You got that in the whole total reality of the thing. That says a lot if you stop and think about it. All right? The guards which followed, they were Persian. None of us, that didn't mean they all were long-haired cats either. They were Persian officers and troops, okay? They followed me. None of us put off our clothes, saving or except that everyone put them off for washing. Now, what was this, their clothes? Well, it told you up, they had on habergeons, spears, breastplates. What is that? Your gospel armor. Never take it off except for washing, my friend. And that is a good spiritual cleansing. It's always a wonderful thing. Otherwise, you have that gospel armor on and in place, every piece of it. And you'll always be protected 24 hours a day. I speak in a spiritual sense. When you prepare mentally and spiritually to absorb the knowledge of your Father's Word, then you won't wilt at the first heat of the day. You won't wilt at the first negative challenge that you receive, or if somebody laughs at you or mocks you, because you already know you've got what you want. You've got the victory. Let them laugh. Laugh at them. All right? You know that God the Creator is going to crush them anyway. So he who laughs last many times laughs least. But always rest assured, God loves you, and if God loves you, He's going to protect you. It's the strongest tie of kinship there is in the world. I'm going to repeat that. It is the strongest tie of kinship in the world, is the love of our Father for His children. It is far greater even than our love for our own children and protecting them. If you can, and they earn a blessing, you're going to give it to them. Then know that your Heavenly Father is going to give to you also. It really makes His day to be able to just pour a huge blessing out on you. But you gotta be prepared and earn it first, okay? And many times it's very difficult for we in these flesh bodies, we mortal human beings, to understand sometimes that a blessing to us can be considered something other. But overall, in His plan, it's always a blessing. So, gospel armor on and in place. Let your watch be vigilant. Keep a sharp eye. And let your love flow forth behind the wall of Almighty God. We'll pick this up in the next chapter, and we will see the murmurings of our own people as tough work happens. You'll have people that they can't stand a little pressure, and that's all right. Just don't put them on the front line. Move them to the back. Just put them aside for emergencies or odd jobs. Only keep those in the front line that can really stand the test, the grumblings and all the little idiosyncrasies that go along with human beings, for there's nothing new under the sun. We're going to get into that in the next chapter. Hey, don't miss it. All right, bless your heart. You listen a moment, won't you please?